Well, hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Anne-Marie Green. The U.S. and Iran may be on the verge of a major military conflict after an American airstrike killed a top Iranian commander. The U.S. launched a strike overnight near Baghdad's airport, killing General Qassem Soleimani. Tensions between the two countries have been rising for months. Just last week, an American contractor was killed in Iraq. The U.S. responded by launching airstrikes that killed dozens of Iran-backed militia fighters. Chaos and violence then erupted at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and now Iran has vowed revenge after losing its elite military chief. The Pentagon says that he was actively planning attacks on U.S. troops in Iraq. So just a few minutes ago, President Trump tweeted, quote, General Qassem Soleimani was killed or has killed or badly wounded thousands of Americans over time. He also says that he was plotting to kill more. He went on to say that the general should have been taken out many years ago. Now Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is defending the president's decision to order the strike.
President Trump made the decision, a serious decision, which was necessary. There was an imminent attack. The orchestrator, the primary motivator for the attack was Qassem Soleimani, attempted to disrupt that plot. You all have been talking this morning about the history of who Qassem Soleimani is. He's got hundreds of American lives, blood on his hands. But what was sitting before us was his travels throughout the region and his efforts to make a significant strike against Americans. There would have been many Muslims killed as well, Iraqis, people in other countries as well. It was a strike that was aimed at both disrupting that plot, deterring further aggression. We hope setting the conditions for de-escalation as well.
So David Martin is at the Pentagon with a closer look at how the attack unfolded after months of escalation.
Iran state television confirmed General Qassem Soleimani's death overnight. A deputy commander of Iranian-backed militias, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, a close advisor to Soleimani, who was sanctioned by the U.S. for violence against Americans, was also killed. Unverified video from the scene near Baghdad International Airport shows the wreckage of two vehicles. President Trump authorized the Thursday airstrike as part of his maximum pressure campaign, which has intensified in recent months. In a statement, the Pentagon blamed Soleimani for the deaths of hundreds of American service members, writing, he was actively developing plans to attack American diplomats and service members in Iraq and throughout the region. The U.S. blames Soleimani for orchestrating the rocket attack on an Iraqi military base that killed an American contractor last month, and for approving the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad earlier this week. Retired General David Petraeus, who commanded American forces during the war in Iraq, called Soleimani our most significant and evil adversary in the greater Middle East. Seen as a terrorist in the U.S., Soleimani was respected in Iran and tried to reshape its influence in the region. He had the backing of Iran's supreme leader and was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization that armed and trained Iraqi Shiite militias responsible for killing U.S. troops.
Enough is enough.
Earlier in the day, Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Iran may be planning new attacks against the U.S. and that the game has changed.
This is part of Iran's malign behavior that they've been spreading across the region from Africa all the way through the Middle East into Afghanistan now for 40 years. And it's this type of bad behavior that simply needs to end.
President Trump warned earlier this week Iran would pay a price, but he did not want war.
I don't think that would be a good idea for Iran. It wouldn't last very long. Do I want to? No. I want to have peace. I like peace.
So CBS News national security correspondent David Martin is following the very latest from the Pentagon for us. So, David, as we mentioned, the Pentagon says that Soleimani was planning active threats against the U.S., diplomats and U.S. troops. But clearly what the Trump administration has said, what the Secretary of State have also sort of underlined is that this is not new for him. This is what he has been doing all along. So why was it necessary then? What are you hearing about why it was necessary to stage this airstrike now as opposed to just evacuating Americans?
In the last several days, Iran has crossed two red lines. There was the rocket attack last week which killed an American contractor. And the U.S. has said that it will hold Iran responsible for the actions of these Shia militias in Iraq. So they killed an American. That's one red line. And then they attacked the U.S. Embassy. That is the second red line, which harkens back to 1979 when an Iranian mob took over the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and crippled American foreign policy in the Middle East for many years. And of course, there was intelligence that Soleimani was organizing additional plots against the U.S. And I really think that when Secretary of Defense Esper said enough is enough, that was basically the decision that was made. This guy is just going to keep attacking us, making it more dangerous for Americans, and so we're going to take him out. Now, the question is, will that make it more or less dangerous for Americans? And we're only going to know that as this story unfolds over the next days, weeks, and months.
Right. And what of our allies? What has their reaction been? Do we know if they were alerted to this plan beforehand?
Well, it doesn't seem like anybody but Senator Lindsey Graham was alerted to this operation beforehand. The reaction from allies that I've seen has been fairly predictable. Israel, which is an arch enemy of Iran and of Soleimani specifically, has praised the operation. Great Britain, a loyal ally of the United States, has been very lukewarm, saying it recognized what a malign actor Soleimani could be, and then instead of saying that we're better off without him, said that both sides should now try to avoid further escalation.
So it seems that retaliation is what many are expecting from Iran, but the nature of that retaliation is what seems to be up in the air. Is the U.S. prepared for whatever Iran dishes out, and what could Iran dish out?
Well, I think if you look at history, it's fairly clear what these proxy groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon have been doing over the years is suicide bombings of American installations, kidnapping of American citizens, and we've seen over the past 2 months in Iraq the shelling by these Iranian-backed militias of bases where U.S. troops are located. I don't think there's much mystery as to how Iran might retaliate. The issue here is, will U.S. intelligence be good enough to see this stuff coming and be able to head it off? And if you go back and look at history, we've been caught badly by surprise by some of these suicide attacks over the years.
So we know that several hundred troops have already been deployed to the Middle East, I believe. What could we see, do you think, in terms of a military presence in Iraq, in the Middle East? Can we expect more troops to be deployed?
You can expect more troops to be deployed. I wouldn't be surprised if today we see orders signed out by the Secretary of Defense sending an additional 5,000 troops to the Middle East. That would include 3,000 more paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne and 2,000 Marines who are aboard ships that are right now in the Mediterranean. Those troops likely won't go in to Iraq unless they are needed there to protect bases. They will probably go into Kuwait, or the Marines aboard ships will go into the Persian Gulf to be ready to go where they're needed, when they're needed.
All right, David Martin, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Sure thing.